much for the introduction. And I'm really glad to be here, invited. And because my presentation is short, because my family issues. And thank you, Gretchen, for accepting the making the short presentation. And also, when I'm listening to Dr. Sons were in Seattle, and I'm graduated from the University of Victoria, BC, Canada, and I received the MA and BA, MA, and a PhD from the University of Victoria. So I really feel close to the Seattle and Dr. Sun, and also my department was linguistics, and some applied linguistics courses are offered there. And my teachers are from OISE, and they are a student of the Meryl Swain and Jim Cummins. So I see some connections to you. Okay.
That's wonderful. That's
yeah.
Wonderful. It's such a small world, yes.
And in this short talk, I will show some challenges of English language education in Japan in relation to globalization, and share my views on how Japan's Ministry of Education can deal with these challenges. And go. So today, globalization affects in various areas, including educational fields in society. And many countries have been working to accommodate their language education to globalization. This is also happening in Japan. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, which is called MEXT hereafter, has established some language education policies to respond to globalization. However, it was not clear to what extent globalization was addressed in current English language education. And one way to determine this is to examine English textbooks approved by MEXT. In Japan, the use of these textbooks are required at schools from elementary to upper secondary levels. So MEXT can ensure the implementation of its curriculum. Okay. As you know, globalization is understood in various ways. And here I will present one interpretation of globalization given by Giddens, 1999. Globalization is a compression of time and space, an intensification of social, economic, cultural, and political relations, and series of global linkages that render events in one location the potential and immediate importance in other quite distance locations. So globalization is a transnational phenomenon. Under the globalized world, people in different locations communicate with each other without paying a lot of attention to a national border. In order to establish a successful communication, they use a common language. So global communication requires a shared linguistic code. And one of these codes is English. And as people from different parts of the world spoke English, English speakers became aware of the difference between the areas. In other words, they recognized that there are various types of English. So globalization led people to be more aware of the diversity of English and its users. Importantly, some people pointed out that globalization induced some challenges in English language education. And here I will introduce three of them. One is what variety and culture should be an appropriate acquisition target in a community and country. Traditionally, a native English speaker model has been adopted as an acquisition target. However, today, English is used by not only native speakers, but also non-natives, and local varieties in various locations in the world have been developed and spoken by the locals. In case of Japan, where English is not used largely in society, Japanese people are likely to speak English to foreign visitors from not only English-speaking countries, but also non-English speaking countries. In fact, the Japanese most likely communicate in English with people from Asian countries, since Japan receives most of the foreign visitors from Asia. Then what variety and culture are appropriate as a target in Japan? This is an important question which must be answered. And the second challenge is, what abilities do learners need to acquire to communicate with English speakers with diverse backgrounds? How can they develop these abilities? In a global society, people with diverse backgrounds establish intercultural communications, so that English language education must be designed to prepare learners for successful intercultural communications. And the third challenge is what are appropriate curriculum and teaching materials to prepare learners for communications with various English speakers in the global society. And this question needs to be taken care of by MEXT, that's the Ministry of Education in Japan, as it is a major language education policymaker, which determines curriculum and examines textbooks from elementary to upper secondary schools. In this presentation, through my study results of English textbooks, I will attempt to answer whether MEXT is paying attention to these issues. Okay, now I will present some of Japan's language education policies relevant to globalization. As you know, language education policy particularly addresses goals of language education and concerns how language is taught in an education system. The policy covers issues on not only students and teachers, but also syllabus and curriculum, the methods and the materials, and the economic resources and assessment and evaluation. So MEXT is responsible for issuing courses of study, which is the standard for the school curricula, plans, proposal, and commissions and working groups to discuss educational issues and publish and proposals, programs and proposals to improve the courses of study. And hereafter, courses of study is called COS. Yeah, as you can see here, items with blue letters are COS. See, and those with red letters are programs and plans and proposal. And these are issued by MEXT. And basically, when plans and proposals are issued, important points of in the proposal and plans are integrated into the following COS. So, for example, when a JET program was launched, about the AOTs are integrated in the following 1989 COS. Okay, and COS are generally revised every 10 years. And in 1947, the first COS were published under the US control. And here I listed COS programs and proposals issued after the 1980s. As you know, from the 1980s on, the period of internationalization, from the 1980s on is the period. So in the 1980s, internationalization of Japan became a popular issue in various fields in the country due to the expansion of Japanese economies into the global markets, and the COS responded to the social demand of promoting internationalization. In 1989, revised COS were published, which emphasized the necessity of internationalization in ELT. And let's see, year 2002, COS was issued, which stated that implementation of English conversation activities at elementary school. And this one is not mandatory, but electives activities. But over the 90% of our school employed these activities. And year 2011, revised COS were issued, which introduced mandatory English language activities at grade 5 and 6 at elementary school. So before the COS introduced the elective English conversation activities, but now it became a mandatory. And important one is this one, year 2011, the Project for Promotion of Global Human Resource Development was formed. And this project introduced the term global jinzai. And global jinzai is a translation translated in a global human resource in English. Okay, so global jinzai are popular now, and global jinzai are people that can communicate successfully in a global environment with English speakers who have diverse backgrounds. And this fostering a global jinzai became the educational goal in Japanese ELT. And currently, we have this COS, a 2017 COS for elementary and lower secondary schools, and 2018 revised COS for upper secondary schools. Okay, and here I will briefly talk about JET program, as this program is relevant to internationalization and globalization in ELT and influential to learners' perception of English variety. So in 1987, JET program was launched, and this program's aim is to enhance mutual understanding between Japanese and other countries to contribute to the promotion of internationalization in Japan. And in the beginning year of this JET program, only 4 countries joined. And from these countries, ALT are recruited. But now, not only the English ALTs, but French, German, Chinese, and Korean ALTs exist at school now. And here, I will introduce Kachu's 3 concentric circles. Some of you know about these circles. This is pretty famous for the categorization of English spoken in the world. And this, how can I, okay. This circle will be used to explain this figure, which is the percentage of English ALTs in 2022. So inner circle variety means English spoken by a majority of people as a first language. And in this circle, USA, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand belongs to this circle. Okay, the outer circle variety means English used as an important communication tool in the multilingual society of the former British and American colonies. And in this circle, Philippines, South Africa, Singapore, and Jamaica, and other former British colonies belong to this circle. And the island is in between. The culture didn't categorize this island into any circle, but I'd like to add to the inner circle. And the expanding circle variety means English as a foreign language with no official status. So in this circle, Japan, China, Korea, and Taiwan, and other non-English speaking countries belong to this. So as you can see in this figure, over 80% of the English ALTs are actually in the circle. But interestingly, we have ALTs from outer circle. That's, I thought, a kind of mixed globalization. They are more paying attention to higher ALTs from other non-inner circle countries. But still, the majority of English ALTs are from inner circle countries. And the fact that most ALTs are from the inner circle countries becomes one of the source for learners to perceive that English is dominantly used by native English speakers from the inner circle. In a classroom, an ALT is the person whom the learners communicate with in English, in addition to their Japanese teacher. Therefore, it is easy for the learners to develop a sense that English speakers are from the inner circle if the learners are taught by LTs from that circle. Okay, and now I will present a few points of the current COS. The first one is COS for elementary and lower secondary schools. The current curriculum was set by the reference to CEFAL, and this is new in COS. And English language activities for grade 3 and 4 are started under the COS. And in these activities, learners learn the English conversation. So listening, interacting, and presenting, that's their focus. And English as a subject for grade 5 and 6 are also introduced. And learners learn in this class how to write and read. So basically, students learn English as a subject, like other math or kokugo, Japanese language. And at the lower secondary level, the aim is to develop 5 English abilities for communication in a balanced manner. In the previous COS stated developed 4 English abilities, but now it changed to 5 because listening, writing, reading, writing, and not speaking. Before it was speaking, but now it became the speaking is divided into 2, interacting and presenting. So this is the aim for the lower secondary. And for the upper secondary schools, COS states the curriculum was set by the reference to CEFAR, and new English classes are introduced at the upper secondary level. One is English communication. This class is designed to develop 5 basic English skills. Again, before it was 4, but now it became the 5 because speaking is divided into interacting and presenting. And the second newly introduced English class is logic and expression. Before it was English expression, but now it's called logic and expression. And all of these are electives. And these classes are designed to engage in speech, presentation, debate, discussion, and paragraph writing. And here, I introduce the process of publishing textbooks from elementary to upper secondary schools. These are approved by the MEXT. Let's see. The how to publish the textbook is stated in this law, the Fundamental School Education Law and School Education Law, which are both published in 1947. And this figure illustrates how textbooks are published. In the first year, after the revised COS are issued, private sector publishers form a textbook writing teams composed of scholars and teachers, and each team writes a textbook. The textbook followed the COS while benefiting from the publisher's own creativity and ingenuity. In year 2, a publisher applies to MEXT for a textbook examination. MEXT determines the textbook's suitability for inclusion in school curriculum. And MEXT asks revisions to the publisher if necessary, and the publisher revises the textbook. In year 3, the textbook which passed the MEXT examination is sent to education boards and schools for adaptation. The education boards and schools decide which textbook among many to use, and then places an order to the publisher. That's in year 3. And in year 4, finally, students receive the textbook. So as you can see in the figure, it takes time for textbooks to be used at school after issuing the revised COS. Okay. Here, I will define, let's see. No. Sorry. One of the MEXT goal in English language education is to foster learners as a global jinzai. Then what do English textbooks need to include to foster learners as a global jinzai? I will introduce Matsuda's criteria to define this. Matsuda developed criteria to evaluate teaching materials which help prepare learners to use English to become part of the globalized world. And these are criteria that she gave. One is the choice of the target variety and cultures. Second one is adequate exposure to numerous English varieties and awareness of English diversity. And third criteria is the presentation of learners' variety. And fourth criteria is the appropriateness for local context. Therefore, appropriate English varieties and cultures for local context are essential in English textbooks. In addition, as learners are expected to communicate with English speakers with diverse cultural backgrounds in the future, the learners must develop their intercultural communicative competence. Therefore, it is necessary for the textbook to have appropriate readings and activities to develop learners' intercultural communicative competence. So I add this to Matsuda's criteria. So these are necessary items in the textbooks. So here I will define intercultural communicative competence, and which will be abbreviated in ICC. And ICC is composed of 1, cultural knowledge of one's own country as well as other countries. 2, the attitude of thinking from the perspective of others and respect for others. 3, cultural awareness to understand that people have different beliefs and values shaped by diverse cultural backgrounds. And 4, the ability to lessen misunderstandings and miscommunications caused by cultural differences. So the point is ICC is composed of cultural knowledge and necessary attitude, cultural awareness, and necessary ability for the communication. So by using an appropriate textbook, learners can acquire linguistic abilities in ICC. And given Matsuda's criteria in ICC as necessary factors for textbooks, I examined the textbooks at upper secondary level. I examined 9 textbooks of English Communication 1, produced by 3 publishers. And the publishers were randomly chosen from the 2020 MEXT textbook list. And in the study, I focused on examining reading text and the textbooks from the perspective of culture, country and region, conversation type, and the ICC activity. And here, research questions. Question 1, what culture type? I will explain this soon. Does each reading text in the textbooks represent? I examined the main topics of each reading by culture type. And question 2, what countries and regions appear in readings? Question 3, what conversation type appears most in readings? So for the conversation type, I divided it into 3 types. One is between native speakers and non-native speakers. Second type is non-native speakers and non-native speakers. And third type is native speakers and native speakers. And question 4, what ICC activities are included? There are some activities aiming to develop ICC. Thus, learners should engage in these activities in classrooms. And this shows the culture types. I adapted the concept of culture types proposed by Cortazzi and Jin and McKay. And these culture types are 3. One is a target culture, which is the culture of an inner circle country. And second type is source culture, which indicates the learner's own culture. And the third type is international culture. This is a culture, neither a culture from the country other than learner's own culture, nor an inner circle country, but it is a culture of a mixture of cultures from countries where English is used as a common language of communication by people from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. And here is the result of my study. For the first question, what culture type does each reading in textbooks present? As you can see here, international culture is presented most in the textbooks. And in international culture here includes many cases of Japanese people's interaction with English speakers with diverse cultural backgrounds in both Japanese settings as well as international settings. And also here is a non-specific category. In the textbooks, I found some readings which are not associated with any particular countries. These readings are about animal behavior and robot development. And these readings are categorized into non-specific. And this is the question for the what countries, regions appear in a reading. As you can see here, Japan appears most in readings because the examiner textbook is a Japanese one. But in addition, the setting of many readings are situated in Japan and the West, or Japan and the US or UK. Therefore, the percentage of West and US UK are higher than the others. And also I found this global topics appear several times. That percentage is high. And in this category, space is the major topic. So development of space technology for the space in Japan is going to this category. Okay, and next question is, what conversation type appears most in readings? As you can see here, more than half of the conversation type is non-natives versus native speaker conversation type. And the second most was a non-native speaker conversation. And third one is a native speaker and native speaker conversation. But these two groups are very close in number. Okay, the last question is, what ICC activities are included? To examine the occurrence of ICC activities in the textbooks, I adopted Horace ICC activities, which are cultural simulators, culture capsule, self-confrontation, role-play, cultural simulation games, and discussions. Because of the time, I don't explain what they are now, but I found that only role-play activities are used in the textbooks. Also, the textbooks generally have the discussion activities, but this activity is used simply to develop learners' reading comprehension skills and enhance understanding about the content of the reading. According to Hora, discussion activity in ICC is learners discuss various topics from intercultural aspects. Therefore, I didn't count the discussion activities in the textbook as an ICC activity in this study. Okay. So from all of my textbook study result, we can see how globalization is addressed in the textbooks as follows. One, it is important to establish intercultural communications. Two, the diversity of culture is present by various Western cultures and some non-Western cultures. And three, when the Japanese communicate with English speakers, they sometimes interact with Asian or other English speakers from the expanding or outer circle, but they mostly communicate with native English speakers from the inner circle. And four, the dominant users of English in the global community are native speakers from the inner circle. And these indicate that globalization is seen as the communication not between Japanese and Asian and a few other English-speaking people, but primarily between the Japanese and Westerners, especially native English speakers from the inner circle. And findings from my study show that following implication. A native speaker model is the target for the learners in English language education. This is also supported by the higher percentage of English ALTs from the inner circle. However, the native speaker model as the learner's target in English language education unfortunately can develop a sense of superiority on inner circle varieties and cultures while overlooking other English varieties and cultures in the learner's mind. In other words, native speakerism among Japanese students is likely to be formed because of the English language education. Okay, it is not ideal for learners to possess native speakerism as they are expected to be global jinzai who communicate with English speakers with diverse backgrounds. They will communicate with English speakers from not only the inner circle, but also the outer and expanding circle. To foster the learners as global jinzai, the gap between language policy, which aims the fostering the learners as a global jinzai, and educational practice needs to be reduced. To do so, MEXT must consider what an appropriate target and culture is for the learners. 2, textbooks need to include content and activities to develop learners' ICC and knowledge about the diversity of English and its users. 3, more English ALTs from non-inner circle countries should be recruited. Okay, conclusion. Many countries have been working to accommodate their language education to globalization. This is also happening in Japan. However, MEXT can do more to prepare English language learners for globalization. What I found from a textbook study suggests that MEXT is not largely concerned with the following issues, which are presented earlier in this talk. And given that we live in a global society, we need to find answers for these questions above to prepare learners for successful intercultural communication, English communication in a global society. Therefore, in addition to any questions you may have, I suggest that we explore these questions during our discussion period. And these are references of my talk. And thank you very much.